Thank you, and let me thank the gentlelady for her leadership and for yielding and for organizing these very important special orders. Also, really for reminding us tonight of much of this unfinished business of our great country and laying out the glaring disparities that we're witnessing in the African American community, but also what our economic empowerment agenda is of the Congressional Black Caucus. So thank you, Congresswoman Tubbs Jones. Millions of Americans are one paycheck, that is, if they have a paycheck, away from poverty. Now, the numbers speak for themselves. Gas prices are at record levels, averaging, now in my district, $3.73 a gallon. Even as oil is traded at over $100 a barrel and big oil companies are reaping in record profits. Foreclosures have skyrocketed, putting hundreds of thousands of people out on the street. The American dream of home ownership is quickly turning into a nightmare for many hardworking individuals and families in our country. In my district in Alameda County, we are projected to lose nearly 4,700 homes to foreclosures due to the subprime mortgage crisis, eliminating a $3.2 billion in home equity value. That's equal to a drop in home equity by almost $8,500 for each homeowner in my district. Meanwhile, food prices have steadily risen, squeezing recipients of food stamps, even as the number of people expected to enroll in the program will reach a record 28 million people in the next fiscal year. Healthcare costs are going through the roof, even as this administration is posing massive cuts in funding for Medicare and Medicaid, and African Americans continue to be the hardest hit. As of February 2008, the unemployment rate for African Americans was over 8.3%, nearly double the national average of 4.3%. Among the African American community, poverty rates are 2.5 times higher than the national average. Even more disturbing, almost 40% of African American children under 5 years of age live in poverty. And all the while, African Americans continue to be the target for, as we talked about earlier, subprime loans. African Americans are 3 times more likely to have a subprime loan than whites, accounting for 52% of all subprime loans. And as the housing market has collapsed, estimates indicate that African Americans alone will lose between $164 to $213 billion in home equity value during this recession. It's long past time for Congress to address the burden of this economic downturn on the African American community and other communities of color, and address the ongoing lack of opportunity in minority communities in America. Even in the face of this massive housing crisis, an impending recession, growing unemployment, and the highest number of applicants for food stamps since the program's inception, the Bush administration wants to cut funding, mind you, cut funding for the most vital programs so that he can continue to fund his failed occupation in Iraq. This is partly due to the Iraq billions of dollars that have been spent, this economic downturn. I personally call this the Iraq recession. At nearly $500 billion, the occupation of Iraq and the resulting Iraq recession has wasted too much of American treasure, drained too much of our American resources, and most importantly, claimed too many American lives. And we cannot dismiss the toll that this occupation has had on the economic security of our nation and on the average American family who will feel the impact of these expenses for years to come. The Joint Economic Committee estimates the total bill for the war through 2008 will cost the typical family of 4 a full $16,500. Can you imagine what a family of 4 could do with $16,500? This conflict has claimed the lives of more than 4,000 brave members of our armed forces and has resulted in injuries to more than 28,000 others. 5 years after the invasion and occupation of Iraq, 47 million Americans are living without health insurance, 47 million. And more than 36 million people continue to live in poverty, at least 2 million of which have fallen into poverty since 2003. 5 years later, it is projected that more than 2 million American families will lose their homes to foreclosure, primarily over the next 2 years. And worse, as the demand is increasing for programs serving children, the elderly, and the poor, and those facing the loss of their income, more than half of our states face serious budget shortfalls that will force them to cut back or even eliminate programs that serve the most vulnerable of our populations. So, Mr. Speaker, we must address the needs and the will of our country by bringing an end to this occupation and to the immeasurable costs that will continue to be exacted on the physical and economic security of the American people for generations to come. 41 years ago, Dr. Martin Luther King was, as he said, compelled to see the war as the enemy of the poor and attack it as such. Of course, Dr. King was referring to the Vietnam War, but his understanding of the relationship between the vast sums spent dropping bombs in a foreign country and the resulting lack of funding for programs that relieve hunger and poverty are just as true today as they were back then, especially now with this economic downturn. A recent survey revealed that 68% of Americans believe that ending the war and occupation in Iraq is an important step the United States government must take to respond to the current economic recession. So we must put an end to this occupation, and we must fund a real economic stimulus plan that expands unemployment assistance and food stamp benefits, provides housing assistance and foreclosure relief for homeowners, and expands Medicaid payments to states through the federal medical assistance percentage. We need to pass a real bankruptcy reform bill. I believe this one that we're working on now is H.R. 3609. It's called the Emergency Home Ownership and Mortgage Equity Protection Act of 2007 that will give struggling homeowners a fighting chance to stay in their homes. We've got to reauthorize and realize, yes, that Hope 6 is an important housing initiative, and pass H.R. 3524 to finally stop putting an end to predatory lending. And instead of spending billions to bail out Bear Stearns, we should really be investing that money to train our workforce and to expand green jobs and eradicate poverty. So, as we remember, 3 years ago, Hurricane Katrina served as a real rude wake-up call to the nation and the continuing inequality that plagues minority communities, especially the African-American communities in America. Katrina opened the eyes of many Americans about the continuing burden of poverty that often isolates and traps generations of Americans of color, African Americans, in a cycle of poverty and disenfranchisement. So we cannot ignore the legacy of Katrina, nor can we ignore the legacy of Dr. King's words. So this week, as we approach the 40th anniversary of Dr. King's assassination, let us all make a commitment to honor his vision and his life's work. We must end this occupation of Iraq, and we must enact a real economic stimulus plan so that the American people can move forward, take care of their families, come out of this downturn, and really begin to live the type of life, the quality of life that they so deserve in the wealthiest and most powerful country in the world. Thank you, Congresswoman Stephanie Tubbs Jones, for giving us the opportunity tonight to talk about the real suffering that people are feeling, but giving people some hope that there are many here in Washington, D.C. On the battlefield trying to turn this around.
I want to thank